Hey everyone, it's Christos here, aka the FRAG. Say hello to my little friend. This is Frankie, and Frankie goes to Hollywood. So he's going to be going to Hollywood now, but he's going to be joining us before we finish up. So we'll say goodbye to Frankie. So today, what I wanted to do was actually cover a video on my Fender Stratocaster that I profiled a few weeks ago. And that was when I just bought it and I was going through all the different specifications and all the different little things that you probably need to look out for when you're buying a Fender Stratocaster. In this review, what I want to do is actually go through the post-purchase modifications that I've done to the guitar. But before I do that, please hit like, hit subscribe, because I'm always going to be putting out new videos. And this particular channel that I'm running here has anything to do with guitars, basses, rock music, and it's a community where we can all come together, and hopefully I can inspire people to pick up a musical instrument and enjoy the beauty of playing a musical instrument, but also working on it as well and really knowing what you're doing so you can set up your musical instrument to your specification and do it so that it gives you even much more pleasure playing it. So what I'll do is I'll start running through the Fender Stratocaster. So this is the guitar that I bought about, I've had it for a couple of months now. And I've done some work to it, and I'll go through that, but I'll also go through some of the things that, you know, to look out for and be mindful of when you're doing these types of modifications. So firstly, what you'll notice is here, I've actually put Jim Dunlop Strap locks here and also here. But I don't actually use the part of the Jim Dunlop strap lock that is the lock itself. So basically what I do is I just have my strap on here, and I've replaced the standard Fender strap holders because I noticed that the Jim Dunlop strap holders are wider and just gives you that extra level of comfort and security and peace of mind that your strap's not going to come off midway in a performance and your guitar's going to go crashing to the ground. So I bought them on eBay. It cost me like about $10, and they do come with thicker screws, and it really holds these tight. You know, these can withstand hundreds of pounds of pressure. They are very, very strong, and you can't go wrong with them. I do have a strap, a levy strap that I do have the lock component, which I'll just quickly show you now. I'll just grab it. So here, this is the piece I was talking about. So what you do is you press this spring-loaded button in, and what it does, there's these little balls that when you press the spring-loaded button in, the balls contract, they actually come inside, and then when you insert it into the actual Jim Dunlop strap holder, for example, you'll see here, now that's not coming off. That is hard as nails, and then if you want to remove it, you just press it back and it just releases. But I don't use it. I actually have another strap, and for me, I just find these very, very wide, that they're wider than the standard Fender strap holders, and they do the job just as good. So like I said, they cost me about $15 from eBay, and took me all but a few minutes just to unscrew. And what I also would recommend, guys, is you can probably see there I've got a little felt tip, a white one, which complements the lighter color of the guitar, and also the white pickups, knobs, and also toggle switch, because when you're tightening it, if the metal makes contact with the finish, it can strip the wood and also cause indentations onto the wood, and strip the paint and also cause indentations. By having that felt tip, it preserves the finish. So that's you know, especially if you've got an expensive guitar, the last thing you want to do is make a modification, and then as you're turning the screw, you end up turning the strap holder as well, and that could grind into the woodwork and also the paintwork or the nitrocellulose or the lacquer or anything like that. So just be mindful of that. Okay, so the next modification that I did was the actual bridge saddles, and you'll see here that they're not the vintage bridge saddles. They're a very, very smooth bridge saddle, a very modern style bridge saddle. This particular brand is Gotoh. It's made in Japan, and it's exactly the same specification as the other vintage bridge saddles that I had in the Fender. And the bridge saddles were bent steel, so it's just like a piece of steel that's been bent. but the bridge saddle screws, or the grub screws, really were protruding from the vintage bridge saddle, the Fender stock ones, and it made playing rather uncomfortable at times because it was digging into my palm and it was literally ripping skin off it. It was just had that really uncomfortable playing feeling. These bridge saddle screws are very, very well adjusted and also cut in terms of height, so they're barely protruding even at the very low action that I've got, because as you put the bridge saddle lower, the bridge saddle screws protrude more outward. And even now, I've got this now at about 1 millimeter. The string's 1 millimeter from the frets, which is really low action. I still can barely feel it at all. And the great thing about these Gotoh bridge saddles is that they are made in Japan, and they do have a groove right in the center of them where the string fits in snugly, whilst the other bridge saddles, the Fender ones, they don't. And you tend to find at times is that the strings can have a bit of odd spacing between themselves. So you might have a couple that are closer together, others that are a bit further apart, and it just makes playing a bit, a bit of a different feel, a bit of an odd feel, should I say. These particular bridge saddles, even though they look like they're chrome, they're actually brass but covered in chrome. So that's another thing you guys need to be mindful of, is that when you're buying these bridge saddles, is also the material that you prefer. Brass tends to have a more warmer sound, a more sort of vintage sound, whilst steel and anything of that sort of ilk of metal is going to have a more brighter, open sound, more attack, more pronounced. So it's really down to your tonal preferences. But I will say this, guys, if you are going to buy replacement bridge saddles, do your homework. Make sure that you're buying the right specification. You don't want to buy bridge saddles that are narrower than the ones that you're replacing, so that means your strings are going to be much closer together, so you're going to be making a lot of contact with them and making a lot of that white noise when you're playing lead. And at the same time, you don't want them to be wider to the point where the strings are literally, the two E strings, the low and the high E string, are literally rolling off the fretboard. So you want to make sure that the measurement, the specification of your replacement bridge saddles is like for like. And thankfully these Gotoh ones are, they're exactly the same. And what I did find is that the screws here, when I need to adjust it, in other words, when I need to move the bridge saddle back or forth when I'm setting the intonation, it's much more easier, much more fluid movement than the Fender bridge saddles. And so speaking of intonation, the way that I did things was, I didn't just take out all the bridge saddles, the old ones from Fender, and then replace them with the Gotohs. I did them one by one. So I really took a good mental image of where each one was. And then that way, as I was replacing each one, it was literally much easier to determine where that new piece was compared to the older ones, or the old one that it replaced. And then that way I didn't have to start all over again. So I knew that the low E string was going to be a bit further back from the A, which is going to be a bit further back from the D, and so forth. And then I sort of made a mental image as I went through one by one. I removed it, and then I knew that it was going to be pretty much where I thought it was going to be. So that way it meant that intonation was much easier to set up, because like if you removed them all and then just put them all on, it really takes a lot more time to set the intonation. And the intonation is basically making sure that once you pass the 12th fret, you stay in tune. So this 17th fret on the high E string is actually an A. You want it to be an A. You don't want it to be sharp or flat. Now there's a few ways that people do it. Some people just pluck the open string and then they hit the 12th fret. If the 12th fret is flat, you move the bridge saddle forward. If it's sharp, you move it back until you get a perfect E. Other people just hit the harmonic E to the note, and then that way they can determine if one's off from the other, whether you move the bridge saddle forward if it's flat, if the note is flat, and if you move it back if it's sharp. So yeah, like I said, I would recommend removing them one at a time, because then that way when you put the new one on in comparison to the remaining 5 old ones, you're going to get it better spot on in terms of where it goes, and then you just work your way all the way to the end. and it didn't take me long, it only took me a little while. And then that, and I find now it works really, really well. You'll see I haven't got the tremolo arm. When I'm playing, I don't use the tremolo. I just like to use, and I have the tremolo arm, I have the tremolo flat to the body, so then that way if should a string break, I'm not going to go out of tune. So that works out better for me as well. And I do find that this particular brand of bridge saddles, because they're brass, it does give more of a warmer vintage sound, and it's not as aggressive, and you can still use it for a really nice heavy sound as well. So I'll also now move on to the tuners, which I've changed as well. And you'll see here I replaced with the Fender locking tuners. And the beauty about these tuners is that they're like for like. So the old Fender tuners I just remove, and these ones I replace. And you can see here there's like a dial, and this dial is basically a screw that moves up and down the shaft of the machine head. So you could imagine here you've got this screw in, and inside the machine head, which is this top bit here, there's a screw that goes up, and then what you do is you put your string through the hole, and as you turn the dial, it presses it up against the upper shaft or the upper roof lining of the machine head, and it locks it into place. And basically the benefit that locking tuners give you is that when you're using a tremolo, where you have wraps around a machine head, they unloosen because the string tension is loosened. But then when you put strings back to tension by letting go of the tremolo, what happens is that those strings tighten again, but they may not tighten to the way that they initially were before you use the tremolo. And when that happens, you can go out of tune. So the benefit with a locking machine head is that you just put the string through and literally just clip it and just turn it. What you want to do is actually run the string all the way tight, clip it once you've actually tightened the machine head and lock the machine head, and then literally you're probably going to do about one revolution. That's it. You're probably going to do hardly anything in comparison. But what I've done is I've still made a few wraps around the low E string, and you'll see on the low A and the D string. The reason why I've done that is because that's what's called a break angle. So what I'm trying to do is actually turn the string down towards the machine head, so it makes the break angle lower of the string. So you'll see that the more you turn the string, the more the revolutions make the string point down and down and down, and that's called a break angle. And what you want is you want a really good break angle from where the string leaves the nut. So then that way you don't get a lot of unnecessary vibration and so forth. You'll see also that with the three of the machine heads is that they have lower posts than the E, A and the D strings, or the low E, A and D. And the benefit with that is that really takes care of your break angle as well. There is a string tree here that comes standard with the guitar, and you'll see how the B and the high E strings really cut down. And that way you know that these three are designed for the G, B and high E string, and these three are meant for the low E, A and D string. Another benefit that these locking tuners have is that they have a higher ratio. So these are actually 18:1, whilst the standard Fender tuners are 14:1. And what that means is I have to turn this part of the machine head 18 times before this shaft of the machine head makes one full revolution. And the benefit with that is that the higher the ratio, 18:1, 24:1, 26:1, for example, the better that you are getting a really fine tune without moving it a bit and realizing that you've really gone sharp or you haven't got enough and so forth. So it really allows you to really get that fine tune, as opposed to, let's say, if something was 10:1, you'd just turn it a bit and this would turn quite a bit, and you'd be fighting quite a bit to get that fine tune of the strings. So that's pretty much it that I've done to the guitar. I did actually buy a string tree, but funny enough, the string tree was too high for the strings, so they were literally straight, and I thought, you know what, I might as well just keep the string tree here. But overall, I'm very impressed. I really like these bridge saddles. They're very smooth. They work very functionally. I can really rest my palm on the bridge here because they're a nice flat block. If you look at them, it's like a really nice flat block on there, and it really keeps tune and stability and intonation. I find on now that I've got these bridge saddles is so much better than the Fender ones. So and with the locking tuners, it really makes a difference. Now you can really feel the mechanism working so much smoother. The standard tuners probably a bit harder to turn, and I'd turn it a bit and I realised I was a bit too sharp and I have to turn it back. These ones I find you know, really spot on. Australia wise, they cost me about $95. You know, they're not the cheapest ones, but they are designed for these guitars. And another benefit is that, hang on, there's a fly on my, about to cross my lens. Go away, shoo. These flies, even flies play guitars, and even flies change their bridge saddles. So I've got an audience of flies here. So, but don't go away, you can come back. Okay. The thing is with these machine heads, there's two little pins on the other side of the machine heads that actually fix themselves into screwed out holes at the back of the headstock of the guitar. So what Fender have done at the factory, they've not only made a hole for the actual machine head, but then you'll see that there's no actual screws securing. Usually machine heads will have a screw here, or sometimes with Les Pauls you'll have two screws with machine heads. There's no machine heads here, but there are two pins that actually dig in, rest into two other holes that have been screwed at the factory, and they fit nice and snugly. I know that Kluson also make a replacement for Fender machine heads with this setup, where as opposed to the vintage inline 6 screws where you have a screw on either side and then a screw between each of the machine heads holding them down. This one, there's no screws, there's just 2 needles or 2 pins that dig in and fasten the machine head against the back of the headstock. So it's really good. So Fender being a Fender, like for like, you don't have to do any modifications, you don't have to drill any more holes, you don't have to, there's nothing, it's just a direct replacement, so which is really good. So one other thing is also when you are restringing your guitars, guys, there's this thing called a witness point that you should be very mindful of, and that is basically the way that the string rests at different points of the guitar. And there's basically a few points. Obviously there's the nut and the bridge saddles. You imagine this is a bridge saddle and there's a string that's sort of coming over like that. By pressing down on the strings, what you're doing is you're contouring, you're creating a more natural contour of the string to rest over the machine head, over the bridge saddle. And what that really does is that it gives you better tuning stability, string stability, and also intonation as well. And so when you do that, when you do change strings, I recommend that you just press down a little bit a few times, just to make sure that you've got a really good witness point. And same thing here when you're doing this as well. Just put a bit of pressure down on the strings here and also off the nut as well. So guys, thank you very much. I really feel privileged to be having this opportunity where I can hopefully lend some insight to people who are looking at not only buying a guitar like this, but also doing some work to it. And you know what? If you give it a go, you can end up saving yourselves a lot of money, because, you know, to take something like this to someone here in Australia, for example, to do this work for you, they could end up charging you over $100. And, you know, that's money that I can put back into the guitar or other things for that matter. So you know, I really feel privileged and humbled that I can, you know, shed some insight, and, you know, leave comments if you want to. Like I said, subscribe, because I am putting up videos. Hit the like button, and if you're going to, you know, make any comments, do so, you know, with respect and dignity. So in light of that, thank you very much, and I'll see you guys come the next video. So take care, keep safe, and most of all, stay positive, keep rocking. Thanks.